Let me tell you about four people. Robert is 68. He worked hard his whole life, bought a beautiful home in the suburbs back in the 80s, raised a family, and by every measure, looked like he had it figured out. And honestly, for a long time he did. Karen is 52. Two kids, a solid career in marketing, drove a nice car, and took a holiday every year. If you looked at her Instagram, if she had one, you'd think she was doing great. Then there's Marcus, 38. Avocado toast jokes aside, this guy worked hard, paid off his student loans slowly, watched his friends buy houses he couldn't touch, and spent his weekends at brunch and weekend trips because, well, what else was he saving for? And finally, Zoe, 24. She's got a TikTok, a side hustle, a Stanley Cup, and she's already 3 months into her investment journey. She's the most financially aware 24-year-old in her family's history. 4 different people, 4 different decades, 4 completely different financial realities. And every single one of them fell into the exact same trap. Not a similar trap, not a, well, loosely speaking, trap. The exact same trap, just wearing different clothes depending on the decade, and by the end of this video, you're going to know which version you're living right now. Here's what the trap actually is, and before I name it, I want to be clear. This has nothing to do with being bad with money. Most of the people who fall into it are actually pretty careful. They budget, they think before they spend. The trap is sneakier than that. At some point in every generation's story, the world around them defined what doing well was supposed to look like. A certain kind of home, a certain kind of lifestyle, a certain kind of experience. And without anyone sitting you down and telling you, you absorbed it. We all did. It seeped in through the people around you, the culture you grew up in, the things that got celebrated and admired, and when you could finally afford to live that version of doing well, you did. It felt like the natural next step. This is not greed or carelessness. You were just following the unwritten rules your generation handed you. Rules nobody questioned because everyone around you was following them too. And here's the part that makes it genuinely hard to see. It never feels wrong from the inside. It feels responsible. It feels like progress. So let's go through each generation and listen for the moment those unwritten rules showed up. Because once you see it in someone else's story, you'll start to see it in your own. Robert grew up watching his parents rent. They rented their whole lives, and in the post-war era, owning a home was the ultimate signal that you'd made it. It was stability. It was status. It was the American dream wearing a white picket fence. So when Robert got his first decent job and the bank approved him for the biggest mortgage he could qualify for, he took it. Of course he did. That's what you did. That was the move. And in the 1980s, it actually made sense. Interest rates were high, yes. But so was inflation, property was appreciating, and that house was genuinely going to be worth more. And it was. Robert's house is worth 4 times what he paid for it. On paper, Robert is wealthy. But here's where it gets complicated. Robert is 68, and most of his net worth is sitting inside 4 walls he lives in. He doesn't have the pension he thought he'd have because his company restructured in the 90s. He has some savings, but not enough to fund 25 years of retirement, comfortably. And selling the house means leaving the neighborhood he's lived in for 40 years. The home wasn't the trap. The belief that the home was the whole plan, that was the trap. Robert spent decades maintaining the signal of wealth, the house, the garden, the extensions, while underfunding everything else. The arrival was real. The foundation underneath it had gaps. Karen's trap was quieter, and in some ways, more insidious. Because it didn't feel like one decision. It felt like 100 small, reasonable ones. Gen X came of age during the rise of the dual-income household. They watched their parents' generation and thought, we'll do better. We'll earn more. We'll have more. And they did earn more. That part worked. But here's what happened. Every time Karen got a raise, and she got several, her life expanded to match it. Got a promotion at 32, upgraded the car, hit six figures at 38, moved to a bigger house, kids started secondary school, added the overseas holiday. Each individual decision made total sense. She could afford it. She'd earned it. This is called lifestyle creep, and it's the boomer trap wearing a business casual outfit. The problem isn't that Karen spent money. The problem is that her expenses grew as fast as her income. So despite earning more than either of her parents ever did, her savings rate barely moved. Gap between what came in and what went out stayed almost exactly the same, just at a higher number. At 52, Karen looks financially successful, and in some ways she is. She has equity, she has assets, but she's also 10 years from retirement, and the maths are tighter than they should be for someone who's been earning well for 20 years. The arrival signal for Gen X was lifestyle. Nice things, nice experiences, a life that looked like success. And they delivered that signal every single month on direct debit. Now, Marcus. And look, if you're a millennial watching this, I need you to hear me say this first. The system genuinely moved against your generation in ways that weren't your fault. The 2008 financial crisis wiped out the early careers of an entire cohort of people right at the moment they were supposed to be building their foundation. That's real. That matters. But here's the trap millennials walked into. And it makes complete sense given everything they'd been through. When you can't afford the things that used to signal arrival, a house, a pension, real equity, you start spending on the things you can afford. And for millennials, that meant experiences, travel, restaurants, concerts, subscriptions, convenience. And the culture fully backed this. Spend on experiences, not things. You can't take money to the grave. Live your life. Every lifestyle brand, every think piece, every Instagram caption told millennials that this was actually the enlightened approach to money, that the older generations had it wrong and experiences were the real wealth. Marcus spent his late 20s and early 30s racking up memories. Beautiful ones, genuinely. But at 38, he has very little invested, no property, and a vague anxiety about the future that he manages by booking the next trip. The trap here wasn't spending on experiences. The trap was using experiences as a substitute for building assets, and having an entire cultural movement tell you that was actually wisdom. The arrival signal for millennials became the lived life, the full passport, the story. And it was marketed to them so effectively that many didn't notice it was still just a costume, a different one, but the same function. And then there's Zoe. And Zoe is interesting because Gen Z is the most financially literate generation in history. They grew up watching finance content. They know what an index fund is at 19. They talk about compound interest like it's casual conversation. So you'd think they'd have escaped the trap entirely, right? Not quite. Gen Z's version of the trap is the most visible one ever created because it lives online. The arrival signal for Gen Z isn't a house or a lifestyle or a stamp-filled passport. It's an aesthetic. It's the fit, the tech setup, the apartment that looks good on camera, the brands that communicate, I have taste, I have money, I have arrived, to an audience of thousands. And the cruel twist? Gen Z is doing this while simultaneously investing. Zoe has a stocks and shares ISA. She puts 50 pounds a month in. She's proud of it. And she should be. That's a real start. But she's also spending 200 pounds a month on things whose primary function is how they look on her. Feed. The trap for Gen Z isn't ignorance. It's performance. They know the right language, but sometimes use it to perform wealth rather than build it. Posting about investing while the actual numbers stay small. Talking about financial freedom while the spending habits quietly contradict it. Zoe isn't doomed. Not even close. She's 24, and she's already ahead of where Marcus was at 24. But the trap is there, set and waiting, and it's the same trap it's always been, wearing a ring light and a carefully chosen background. So, 4 people, 4 decades, 1 trap. What does it actually look like to escape it? Because people do. Every generation has people who saw the trap and stepped around it. And when you look at what they did differently, it's almost always the same thing. They separated the signal from the substance. They decided, consciously, that they were willing to look less wealthy than they actually were, so that their actual wealth could grow faster. They delayed the costume. They wore the older car, stayed in the smaller house, skipped a few trips, resisted the aesthetic upgrade, and they put the difference somewhere that compounded. It's not complicated, but it runs completely against every social instinct we have, which is why even smart, financially aware people fall into it. Robert's version of escaping it would have been keep the house, but also fund the pension aggressively. Not all in on one asset. Karen's version, pick one lifestyle upgrade per raise. Bank the other half. Let the income growth outpace the lifestyle growth. Marcus's version, one big trip a year, not 4. Take the difference and put it in an index fund every month without thinking about it. Zoe's version, and she still has all the time in the world to do this, is to make the investing the thing she posts about, not the aesthetic. To build the actual number faster than she builds the look of the number. The rule, if you want one, is this: assets first, lifestyle second. Every time. Not forever. Just until the assets are doing enough work that the lifestyle is genuinely paid for. That's the move every generation that got it right figured out. Robert, Karen, Marcus, Zoe, none of them are bad with money. None of them are stupid. They all just did what their generation told them arrival looked like. And they prioritized looking arrived over being arrived. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I genuinely want you to sit with it. Which version of the trap are you in right now? Is it the house that holds all your net worth? The lifestyle that expanded with every pay rise? The experiences that felt like living but quietly replaced building? The aesthetic that performs wealth without quite creating it? Tell me in the comments. Not to be judged, genuinely, because the first step out of any trap is being able to name it out loud. And if this hit close to home, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear it. They probably know which generation they are.